everyone. We are being recorded, and today is presentation day for the Constellation Incubator. My name is Angela Harmon.
I am Liz Banishow.
And I am Naomi McDougall-Jones, and today we are missing our fourth co-founder, Abini Bloodworth, who is very ill and cannot be here with us here on Zoom, but who is very much with us in spirit and was such an important shape for us. Together, we four are the co-founders of Constellation Incubator, which is presented by Avalon Story, a center of practice to birth the future of storytelling. And you'll see that web link in the chat if you'd like to find out more.
All right, well, the independent film ecosystem has utterly collapsed. If there was ever a healthy indie film ecosystem, there certainly isn't one now. Realistically, the only independent films that stand a chance of making a financial return are those that are chosen by the existing Hollywood system, chosen by those same agencies, distributors, festivals, and actors that drive mainstream films. By the very definition, then, that means that those films that stand a chance of being economically viable are not actually independent films.
Meanwhile, the abusive culture of independent filmmaking, borrowed from the Hollywood and made worse from lack of resources, means that those of us struggling against all odds to get the 70% of voices that have been historically excluded from mainstream cinema, namely anyone who's not cis, white, or an able-bodied man, those of us struggling to get other voices heard, must attempt to survive punishing work conditions like 15-hour workdays, pay that rarely meets the standards of a minimum wage, and of course, a toxically hierarchical way of working that produces neither the best in us nor gives us the creative space for the stories that we are telling to flourish as they could.
This comes at a time when mainstream Hollywood has been bought out, when 3 to 5 multinational corporations get near total decision-making power over what stories the entire US and indeed much of the world consume. And let's be clear, those corporations are not driven by a desire to tell the kinds of stories that will expand people's minds, heal our ailing societies, and move the world towards a more beautiful future.
No, they are driven by late-stage capitalism, quarter-by-quarter profit models. Fundamentally, in legal service to their shareholders, they are interested in a specific chemical formula for content that will keep audiences binging, almost gorging themselves on content, allowing these companies to extract extreme wealth from our eyeballs while never bothering to worry of what effect those stories are having on all of us.
And we know that stories matter. They matter so much.
The stories we tell ourselves create the framework by which we understand our own experience of being alive. Who we are, who that person is, who is important, who cannot be trusted, what any of us is doing here. Stories shape, in a word, everything.
So, if Hollywood has abdicated that responsibility, then the independent film is the critical medium to pick up that slack, to step in and revitalize that societal void created by lack of equitable, sustainable, soulful storytelling.
The pandemic gave the four of us the opportunity to go deep into deep reflection on this massive tangle of problems.
In that reflection, we came to see that tinkering around the edges of the current indie film model wasn't enough. We realized that independent film was in need of nothing more or less than a complete and total redesign. And given that more than 400 of you signed up to be with us today, we're guessing that we're not alone in that realization.
And we realized a big part of the problem was how trapped we felt in ideas of how things have been. That a first step required would be some process to help us and other filmmakers expand our own imaginations around what filmmaking could possibly be like.
So we put out a call to filmmakers. Who might be interested in trying to boldly reimagine independent film with us?
And the response was electric. We received over 150 submissions representing more than 300 artists.
We narrowed that down through 2 rounds of applications to 60 filmmakers representing 30 film projects.
The 4 of us were fortunate enough to receive design thinking facilitation training from Lee Kim and Tracy Brandenburg of Cornell University. And we embarked on an ambitious process, putting these 60 filmmakers through an 8-week incubator to boldly imagine answers to the question, how might we redesign the independent filmmaking ecosystem to be equitable, sustainable, and healthy?
We started back in June with an intensive opening weekend where we talked a lot about values, all about story as a public commons. We dug deep within ourselves and each other to get to the core of what we actually wanted the filmmaking and film distribution process to be like, to feel like, really.
And we also broke the participating filmmakers into 12 design teams, and those are the teams you'll hear from today. And they began together by writing a value statement to serve as their guiding light through this whole process, through the past 8 weeks.
We also brought in bright spot speakers, inspiring innovators from other industries, each of whom told us a story of how they've successfully innovated and transformed a seemingly entrenched system. Hearing their stories, we all felt a new certainty that real change is possible, and that often all it takes is a committed group of people thinking about an old problem in a brand new way.
Then we sent our participating filmmakers off to conduct empathy interviews with real people who represented the humans we were designing for: film financiers and donors, filmmakers, and audience members. And they conducted long-form conversations with more than 100 of these end users to understand their needs and desires.
The teams then spent 6 weeks, each designing a brand new ecosystem for how independent film might work based on the information they gathered. A central idea of design thinking is to prototype early and often. So they imagined broadly, designed quickly, brought back those end users to get their feedback, redesigned, and repeated that cycle at least 3 separate times. What the teams are presenting you today are not finished products.
Today is just another step in the prototype and feedback process that we hope to continue in the coming years. It's like a first step in imagining what else could be. We hope you'll join us and help us to continue to imagine forward from here.
What you will see today in the next few minutes are presentations by each of the 12 design teams putting forth their ideas for how a new indie film ecosystem could work, from financing and production through distribution and marketing. Maybe one or more of these teams has landed on the absolute perfect brand new ecosystem. That would be pretty amazing.
But we don't know yet. This is still an experiment. More likely, each of their ecosystems contains an early thread of an idea that are the seeds for what will come later.
We want you to think of today as the big bang for the next wave of indie film. We selected each of the filmmakers you'll hear from first because we were seeking true diversity of thought, not only in terms of identity, but also backgrounds, life experience, age, location, different types of knowledge, and ways their brains work. But second, because each filmmaker has a feature film that they plan to put into production in the next 1 to 2 years.
Each of them, together or separately, will take some of the ideas seated here today and test them out in real time on their real film projects.
And we're asking them to report back. After today, we are launching a Constellation Incubator knowledge database where over time, these filmmakers can report back information. Well, we tried X idea and it didn't work, and here's why. And we think someone might want to try Y, or this idea worked like gangbusters, and here's how the next person could make it even better.
That knowledge database will be publicly accessible so that the entire film community can benefit from and participate in that continued imagination, experimentation, iteration, and innovation.
We are also inviting you to participate in that as well. If you hear an idea that you like today, try it. Use it on your next film project. These participants have generously agreed to present these ideas fully open source, because that's the kind of film ecosystem we want to live in, where ideas are shared and built on because we all understand that we're stronger and better together and that competition is an imaginary construct. In fact, tomorrow you will receive an email that contains written documents giving you further details and specifics on each of these ecosystems so that you can learn from and build on them yourselves.
We are only asking for 2 things in sharing these ideas with you. 1, we are providing these ideas under a Creative Commons license. And you'll see in the chat, there'll be a link to more information on the Creative Commons license. This license means that anyone can use these ideas, but we ask that you please give appropriate credit to the teams and individuals who created them. 2, we also ask that you report back to the knowledge database, share your successes and failures so that we and others can learn and build as well.
We're also inviting you to give us feedback on these ideas today. At the beginning of each hour, we're going to give you a link into a Google form where we'd ask you to give feedback on each ecosystem you hear about for each idea. What are the things that wow you? And what are the things that confuse you or make you lean away?
Plus, if there's a particular ecosystem or 2 or 10 or 12 that you're especially excited about and might want to participate in the future as a funder, as a filmmaker, or an audience member, on each form you'll have the opportunity to sign up to receive updates on that specific idea and invitations to participate in future iterations.